Imagine you're at a party where everyone can vote on everything. The music that plays, the food that's served, even who stays and who leaves. Sounds like perfect freedom, doesn't it? Now imagine the majority decides that shouting is better than talking, that lying is more fun than truth, and that expelling the wisest makes the party more lively. Welcome to the democracy Plato feared, and he wasn't wrong. Over 2,000 years ago, in an Athens teeming with ideas and debates, a philosopher watched his city-state stumble toward the abyss. Plato witnessed something that haunts us to this day. A democracy doesn't die at the hands of tyrant kings or foreign invaders. It dies by its own hand, suffocated by the ignorance it fed, seduced by demagogues who promise everything and deliver ruin. Plato saw his teacher Socrates condemned to death by a popular tribunal, accused of corrupting the youth simply for asking the right questions. And in that moment, he understood a terrifying truth. When democracy values the opinion of the ignorant as much as the wise, when it treats all voices as equally valid, regardless of knowledge or character, it plants the seeds of its own destruction. In his work, The Republic, Plato describes with surgical precision the degeneration of political regimes. He shows how democracy, though born of freedom, carries within itself the virus that will transform it into tyranny. This isn't empty or elitist criticism. It's a devastatingly accurate observation about human nature. Plato argued that excessive freedom without wisdom becomes licentiousness, that equality without discernment becomes leveling by mediocrity. When everyone is free to do whatever they want without restrictions, when no voice carries more weight than another, regardless of merit, society loses its capacity to distinguish true from false, virtuous from corrupt, wise from charlatan. Think about your own experience. How many times have you seen someone with zero knowledge about a complex subject express opinions with the same confidence as an expert who dedicated decades to study? How many times have you witnessed truth being buried by a more attractive, simpler, more comforting lie? Plato predicted this. He knew that in a democracy where everyone has equal voice, sophistry beats wisdom, because sophistry is easier to digest. Truth demands effort, reflection, humility to recognize our own ignorance. A lie simply flatters us, confirms our prejudices, tells us what we want to hear. And here's the most disturbing point. Plato wasn't just criticizing the political system, he was diagnosing a disease of the human soul. For him, democracy collapses into idiocracy, because the democratic man, the average citizen, is someone who pursues all pleasures equally, without a hierarchy of values. Today he wants justice, tomorrow he wants revenge. Today he defends freedom, tomorrow he demands censorship of those who disagree. Today he applauds truth, tomorrow he shares fake news because it confirms his beliefs. This fragmented soul, without clear direction, without solid principles, becomes easy prey for those who promise order, simplicity, magical solutions. And that's when the tyrant emerges. Can you see the pattern? We're living exactly this right now. Look around you. We live in the information age, but we've never been so misinformed. We have access to all human knowledge in the palm of our hand, but we prefer algorithms that show us only what we already agree with. We have more freedom of speech than any previous generation, but we use that freedom to create echo chambers where dissent is treated as heresy. We have democracy, but more and more people vote based on emotions, tribalism, memes, and sensationalist headlines, never stopping to verify facts or consider consequences. Plato would say, we're not being deceived by external forces. We're deceiving ourselves. Idiocracy isn't imposed, it's chosen. It's chosen every time we prefer the simple narrative to the complexity of reality. It's chosen every time we attack those who think differently instead of engaging with their arguments. It's chosen every time we demand that our leaders be like us, common and flawed, instead of better than us, virtuous and wise. We want to see ourselves reflected in power, and when our reflection is one of ignorance and uncontrolled passions, we elect tyrants disguised as men of the people. If you feel a tightness in your chest hearing this, don't worry, you're not alone. That feeling is awakening. It's the recognition that something is deeply wrong and that perhaps, just perhaps, we're part of the problem. Plato didn't write the Republic to overthrow democracy. He wrote it as a warning, a call to consciousness. If you've already subscribed to this channel, you've taken the first step. You're seeking to understand, question, go beyond easy answers. Continue on this journey, because what comes next will challenge your certainties even more. But here's the twist that few perceive. Plato wasn't against democracy out of elitism or contempt for the people. He was against ignorance being treated as virtue. His criticism was fundamentally a defense of education, of cultivation of the soul, of the search for truth. For Plato, the problem isn't that the people govern. The problem is that the people don't prepare themselves to govern. Democracy without philosophical education, without cultivation of virtues, without love for wisdom, is just the tyranny of the ignorant majority. And this tyranny eventually grows tired of its own disorder and cries out for a real tyrant who promises to restore order, even at the cost of the freedom they so cherished. See the cycle. Excessive freedom generates chaos. Chaos generates fear. Fear generates desire for order at any cost. And then emerges the strongman, the savior, the one who promises to put everything back on track. He doesn't need to be honest. He doesn't need to be wise. He only needs to appear strong and decisive. The exhausted population hands him increasingly greater powers, sacrifices freedoms in the name of security, silences dissent in the name of unity. And when they finally realize they've traded democracy for dictatorship, it's already too late. Plato saw this happen in Athens. History has seen this repeat countless times. We're seeing signs of it today. So what do we do? Plato offers an answer that is both simple and radically difficult. Know thyself. This Socratic maxim isn't just motivational calendar wisdom, it's the foundation of a healthy society. A democracy only works when its citizens are philosophers in the deepest sense of the word, not academic specialists, but people who love wisdom enough to question their own certainties, to seek truth even when it's uncomfortable, to cultivate virtues like justice, courage, temperance, and prudence. This means that you, individually, have an immense responsibility. Every vote you cast, every piece of information you share, every conversation you have about politics and society, all of this shapes the future of democracy. If you share news without verifying, you're feeding idiocracy. If you treat politics like football, blindly rooting for your team without ever acknowledging its mistakes, you're paving the way for tyranny. If you attack people instead of debating ideas, you're eroding the social fabric that keeps democracy alive. But there's an even deeper secret that few know. Plato, in his criticism of democracy, wasn't just talking about external political systems. He was talking about internal democracy, about your own soul. For him, you are a microcosm of the city-state. If your soul is governed by reason, by the search for truth and virtue, you live under an internal aristocracy, the government of the best aspects of yourself. But if your soul is democratic, where all desires have equal voice, where there's no hierarchy between noble and vile, where you pursue momentary pleasures without clear direction, then you are a walking idiocracy. And a society composed of individual idiocracies can only result in a collective idiocracy. This is the shocking revelation. The collapse of democracy doesn't happen in parliaments or palaces first. It happens inside you. When you allow your passions to govern your reason, when you yield to impulses without reflection, when you choose immediate gratification over the greater good, you're enacting on a personal scale the same collapse that Plato described on a social scale. And if millions do this simultaneously, democracy has no chance. But this also means the solution is in your hands. If you govern yourself with wisdom, if you cultivate virtues, if you seek truth instead of comfort, you become an antibody against idiocracy. You can't control how millions of people think and act, but you can control how you think and act. And when conscious people begin to act with integrity, they create waves that inspire others. Change doesn't need to start from top to bottom. It can start from inside out. Plato left us a map, not a condemnation. He showed the dangers, but also the paths. A healthy democracy requires virtuous citizens. Virtuous citizens require philosophical education, not just technical. Philosophical education requires intellectual humility, love for truth, courage to question, temperance to not yield to destructive impulses. And all of this begins with the conscious decision to wake up, to stop being dragged by the current of popular opinion, to become what Socrates called the gadfly that stings the horse, the one who bothers, questions, doesn't allow society to fall asleep in complacency. Plato's warning echoes through the centuries to you, here, now. Democracies collapse into idiocracies when people forget that freedom without wisdom is chaos, that equality without merit is mediocrity, that rights without responsibilities is disguised privilege. But they can also flourish when each citizen decides they won't be part of the problem, that they won't be the weak link that allows tyranny to enter. The choice, as always, is yours. Will you continue surfing on the wave of collective ignorance? Or will you dive into the deep waters of self-knowledge and truth? This isn't just a video about ancient political philosophy. It's a mirror being placed in front of you. What do you see reflected? A citizen who participates in democracy with wisdom, or someone who contributes to its degradation? Plato didn't want you to feel guilty. He wanted you to wake up. Because a sleeping society is a vulnerable society, and you have the power to remain awake. If this message touched something in you, if you feel the call to be part of the solution and not the problem, leave your like on this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this, because collective transformation begins with individual conversations. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications, because we're going to continue this philosophical journey together, exploring uncomfortable truths that algorithms try to hide from you. In the comments, tell me, do you agree with Plato? Is democracy doomed to collapse, or is there hope? Let's debate with respect and depth, as he would have wanted, until the next awakening.